All right, welcome to another totally rewarding chats. I'm gonna have a fun session today. I know I'm here with Paul. It's good to see you today, Paul. Thanks for updating your camera. Those that normally watch may have appreciated his camera going out, but it's nice to see you. And it's nice to see that I can see that you're thinking sometimes.
That's really what it is. Like you'll know when I'm rolling my eyes at you instead of, uh,
Yeah.
you know, hiding it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad we published this out to YouTube and other places so people can see it. Otherwise, you'd probably flip me off more. I know that you I stay SEC positive as
I
we go,
might,
or it's underneath, or you send me the emoji, but it's not on here.
I
So
might
that's
be on better behavior because I'm
yeah.
invisible. And what's funny about this is, by the time this is released, that joke will be kind of old because it'll be like a month or so since we had the episode that I just disappeared in the middle. And
That's true, but it also took me a month or so to realize you had already changed your background and
that's
moved. So, like, that's about on par with the
that's
speed at which I'm operating. Um, we are stoked today to have Nancy, and we're just going to call her Nancy because we had to have Nancy on because on several other episodes, people, if they didn't know, people were referencing you, Nancy, as just Nancy
right.
when we
Oh
talked
my.
about pay equity. Yeah. Oh no, it was around pay equity. It wasn't anything, don't
I
get
was
too
gonna
crazy
say,
or excited. So how
Nancy.
are you?
I'm fighting a cold actually. So hopefully too when this is eventually published, that will be long gone. Otherwise I'm really gonna be in trouble. But no, otherwise I'm well. I am well
Thank you.
today. Thank you for
Good.
asking.
So just so that I can prove that I can say it, can you do your own background, Nancy Romanyshyn?
Well, well
I
done.
normally, for fun, like to mispronounce her name, but not everyone I can see their face. So can you give us your bio and background, kind of where you're at now and how you got there?
Sure, sure. So I work at Syndio, which is a software company that helps companies make pay decisions and has historically done a lot around pay equity analysis and helping companies do their own pay equity analysis. Um, Prior to that, I was working at Willis Towers Watson, that I joined when they were Towers Perrin, if that gives an indication of how long I worked for them. So yeah, I joined them back last
Paul's face,
millennium.
you couldn't see
It's
it,
been
was
a
like, wow,
few.
that's old. I actually can't say anything because I will state Nancy is younger than I am. So I can't say anything.
Only slightly, but yeah. No, so I started at Towers and when they were Towers Perrin back in '98. Worked with them for over 20 years, and I was actually working with Syndio when I was leading the North America Fair Pay team at WTW, then WTW. So that was when I got to a stage where I just really got excited about this whole software thing and all that you could do with it. And I really saw it as the future. So I made the leap and joined Syndio. But prior to that, even there was a time that I was working before I joined Towers Perrin. So for about 6 years, right out of college, I was standing up the compensation function for the first company that I worked for. So you might wonder, why would a company trust that to an undergrad right out of school? Good question.
Yeah,
But
lack of
luckily,
judgment.
I was trained by a consultant at that time, and that was actually my introduction to consulting. Was working with him. He really became a mentor, and it was really great. And I remember looking at him being like, "Wow, that'd be really cool to just, do that at different companies." So that was sort of my introduction to consulting. But from the start, I enjoyed building things and designing things, and it was really great.
So did you want to be in HR when you were in college?
I did.
Oh, we have one. We have one. We haven't had one in a while.
And the real question is why?
Well,
Yeah.
because all right. So
That's
I was a psychology major. So actually way back, I wanted to be a writer. That was the first thing. And then I was like, I'm never going to make any money. So I like psychology. Let me go into psychology. And then after a couple of years of psychology, I was like,
I'm
wow,
never going to make any money.
well, you got to do like 5 more years after.
That's right.
yeah.
I
There's a
was like,
pattern developing here.
yeah, seriously. So I was like, oh man, no, I don't want to I want to do things. I don't want to just keep learning about things. So that's when I was like, I want to do psychology and business. I wonder what that would be like. I actually got an internship at my college working in their HR department. And that was, I was helping write the company newsletter, the university newsletter for the employees. And I was working on a job coding project. So I actually was working in compensation before I even graduated without knowing that it was compensation. So, and then after that, it was like, all right, this is kind of cool. Let me try to work in HR. And it was 92 and there was a recession and nobody wanted to hire anybody, but I did get one interview and it happened to be with the company that I ended up working for. So it worked out in the end.
Wow.
I like that. It's probably a better question, Paul. Why?
Yeah.
So actually, let me go back and summarize that long answer, Nancy. Is I didn't know what I was doing, and it was a recession, and it's the one job I got. Okay.
Yes,
Let me just
that is
summarize.
it. There
Okay.
it is.
And that's how it all starts.
And
So we have
that's
to go
how
through
it
the
all
speed
started.
round. Speed round of questions for you.
Uh-oh.
Are you ready? Very tough questions. So, you coffee or tea?
Both, which I know you hate that answer, but it is
Like
true.
at the same time, she just like.
I
Oh, no.
do. I just go, no, seriously, I'm going to finish my coffee. I begin with coffee.
Okay. I
And
was
then
going
I
to say I was
segue
expecting
into
the consulting answer to it.
Yeah.
No, 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 no. No,
It
it's
depends.
always coffee. It's always coffee. It's maybe tea. How about that?
Oh, okay.
Maybe
Okay.
that's even better.
I know you're an avid reader, and I like the optimism that you have given me a couple books that have words in them and not pictures. That has been appreciated. What's your kind of favorite book recently, or a book that you would suggest to people?
I like fantasy. I like fiction. So I have a couple books back here, and so one of them I read relatively recently was Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which I'm a big Anglophile, and it's like a 20-year-old book. I don't know, by Susanna Clark. Anyway, it's really cool. I wanted to live in that world. It was really interesting. So that was a fun one. And then one that's more like modern times. I loved Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, which is by, who is she? Yeah, Gabrielle Zevin. That was really cool too. That was all about gaming, which I don't do, but it was super cool. I learned a lot. So highly recommend.
There you
All
go.
right. You have a weekend away by yourself. Would you spend it at a posh resort, or would you go out in the woods camping?
So I've done a lot of the posh resort stuff. So I would actually prefer the camping stuff because it's been a while since I've done the camping. So look at Paul with his rolling his eyes.
There's
So
a
no,
point in time, Paul. I need to go back and we need to score these. We need to actually go back and see what the actual number is, because we tend to go in streaks. Actually,
Yeah,
it's kind of
but-
interesting.
And you didn't give the new third choice. Like you've already forgotten that we were lobbied to
Third choice.
presenting it, because like resort has, like where is the resort, right? Like we've gotten the little bit of the, well, is it in the city? And I think the new answer that people have gravitated towards just got to be water. Like that's sort of the point, right?
Cayman
So like that's
Islands,
by
this
water.
is- yeah,
The
this
islands
was
by
great.
water.
Water and beach doesn't need to be posh. It just needs to be by the beach, right? Or
Well,
can
that's,
camp near the
that's the
beach, too.
question. That's the question: beach or mountain, right? Or lake or mountain, like water or mountain thing.
Right.
I guess you can have, So we get there. Bring out something interesting about you. Your favorite part of the triathlon: swim, bike, or run?
Oh, bike definitely.
Paul's like none. Is
No.
there-
No,
watching, finishing,
Bike?
like
No, it's because the swim is terrifying every time. It's just terrifying, and then that you're so relieved that you did it, and then you get on the bike and you're like, yes, I'm on the bike, and then the bike is just fun, and then you're like, yay, and then you get off the bike and you're like, oh my god, I have to run, and I feel like this, I feel like I'm
That's
walking.
by far and away the best description of a triathlon I've heard in a long time. Like that's great. And I will give Nancy mad props. She went from what do you phrase it? I was never an athlete, nor will I ever be an athlete or do anything athletic, to
Yes.
doing a triathlon. So mad props on that. And then, of course, the question you've seen me, I've never actually asked you, I don't think. You've seen me ask numerous times, crunchy or creamy peanut butter?
If
Oh, say it. Say it.
No, I'm not going. Well, no, creamy's what I have in my house, but I actually prefer crunchy. But no one else will eat it.
And there's just not enough, 6 square inches of for the second
No,
child.
because
Like,
hey, I'm a mom. That's what we just learn. It doesn't matter what we want; it's what everybody else
I
yeah,
wants.
don't
I
know
mean
that
that's
that's true because I think here the kids had their stuff, and then there was always a secret stash of
Yeah,
stuff that you preferred that they didn't
yeah,
even know you were doing. So it looked like you were taking one for the team, but you didn't.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like as I've hinted, like we became non-peanut family really because my son has a peanut allergy. But like
right.
prior to that, my wife's a creamy hardcore. I
Oh,
was a crunchy hardcore, and you better believe there were 2 jars of peanut
Yeah.
butter right next to each other because neither of us were giving in. Like there
that
is
was
no
before
way.
before kids, after kids,
Yeah,
right?
and we
So, well,
still
so
like
I'm kind of in the after kids right now. My kids are 22. So now
yeah.
I'm emerging. It's back to, oh yeah, that's right. I used to like this.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. So I'm sort of
Yeah,
in
you've
that
got
stage of life.
space in the pantry for that
Yeah,
jar of crunchy peanut butter. Like,
right, right. And
life is too
today,
short to give that up, Nancy. Like,
you're right. You're right, Paul. You're so right.
So, what I wanted to chat about was pay equity.
Oh yeah.
Weirdly enough, I went back and counted how many times we've presented together, and I had to add the times we were on the panel with Paul to get to 20, which is a lot. And actually, there should be a moment of silence from everyone out there that you've spent that much time with me. That is a rough go. Um,
It's commitment.
and yeah, yeah, that is definitely commitment. Or the fact that you
insanity.
liked doing a triathlon, you just embrace the suck. That was just a new way to do it, as you go. So all those times we've talked about the wicked problem of pay equity. I know you've been out on other panels and podcasted. Give us kind of the highlights that you've seen, and of course Syndio has hundreds and hundreds of clients. Give us kind of the highlight of what's going on right now and how you're seeing companies tackle that, and kind of the best practices from your perspective.
I mean, I guess what's going on right now is what's been great to watch is the evolution of pay equity being this thing that nobody knew anything about to being this thing that everybody knows everything about. Um, so I feel like when we started, say, last year, in the early days, we were at this moment of everybody had a plan of at least how they were going to talk about it and where it fit in their comp philosophy. So I think we had gotten to that place, whether or not you were doing it in house or still working with other or whatever it was, you were doing something about it because you actually had to say something about it. Um, Early last year, though, we had a significant sort of change in those folks that were being like super public about it and celebrating it, at least in the US, right? So with the administration, there was a lot of scrutiny on that in particular, sort of, or a lot of companies, were guessing, wait, where does, pay equity fit with DEI and just everything that you're kind of seeing, improving a meritocracy. And so there was a moment that everybody was like, whoa, what do we do? And then there was this realization of, hey, you know how you prove a meritocracy? You run a pay equity analysis. How do you prove that you're paying for the things that you say that you need to pay, for, or the things you champion, that you're not favoring one group over another, regardless of, what that group is? You run a pay equity analysis. It's a diagnostic tool that you use as part of comp management, that just makes sense. So we've seen that a lot of folks maybe are rebranding what they're doing, but they're not changing what they're doing. They may be talking about it a little differently, but they're still doing what they're doing. And a lot of that is really because of pay transparency overall. So it's still, the other thing I'm seeing is just as much as we've been talking about pay transparency for a really long time, I was reflecting on it was in 2022 that I did my Naked and Afraid talk at World at Work, where I actually shared my own personal pay history, like to try to be like, hey, everybody, like this is gonna happen. Um, Most companies are still kind of doing what they have to do and are still sort of running those position and range analyses right before there's legislation where they have to post ranges. So we're still kind of seeing that we're just doing what we need to do, but everybody is still marching maybe slowly toward more and more transparency. So pay equity just becomes one component of, how do we tell our pay story in a way that's authentic, that we can stand behind, and we can make pay decisions, confidently. So those are the types of things that we're just continuing to see companies wrestle with.
Yeah.
What are you seeing from a best practices standpoint? So let's, I think you've heard me say, like, I assume most people want to be good payers. There's just shit in the way, like money being one a lot of times, right?
Yeah.
Process, whatever. How are you seeing companies get started? When people first reach out to Syndio, or they're, when you're talking, we're talking to groups and they're like,
Yeah.
okay, we actually want to start going through this. How do they start the process without it seeming so overwhelming?
I mean, I honestly, a lot of the companies we're working with are doing something. They've already been doing something. It's more and more we're seeing it that we have to do it more often. We have to do it more. We have to automate it in some way. We have to be more transparent about what we're doing. We want to make sure we're doing it more robustly. Maybe we were sort of doing these like bigger kind of analyses, and now we want to get a little more granular. So it's what we're seeing is it's really more of that migration to, how do we incorporate this into our overall comp management cadence. And so that I would say is sort of that in terms of best practice. It's really rethinking what do you do as a team, and how can you, ensure that you're doing that sort of ongoing monitoring of what you're doing. I see it in the same way that you're seeing a lot of comp teams, they want more real-time data. They want, market data, and one of the things, after having spent a career, building job architectures, it's kind of like, yes, these are all good things that you have to be doing. This is just part of your like compensation kind of hygiene, but like there's no like silver bullet. There's no one thing. It's doing all of these things together as efficiently as possible, and in an ongoing way. I think the one thing I'm enjoying I think it's dawning on people, like you can't just do like, we're going to do a whole job architecture and then we're going to do a big reveal. And like, here it is, we launch it. And it's like, and it's just going to exist. Because that's how I made money in consulting for a really long time. It was my clients, we'd launch it. It was great. And then like 5, 10 years later, okay, we're back,
Yeah.
what happened? Well, the company changed it. So now I'm seeing people are getting better at thinking about it as more of a system.
Yeah.
Something that you're doing ongoing, and how can I use technology, how can I use new techniques, how can I just think differently about what we're doing, so that it's a more ongoing thing.
Well, I heard at one of your sessions someone say it's a process, not a project.
I wonder.
Well, I don't know who that was. How are you seeing people incorporate that though? Because I also joke that the one department we know that's not getting money or headcount generally is comp. And so how are you seeing them tackle the issue of, like, to your point, nothing went away. It really isn't, I wouldn't say huge once you get going, but it's just another thing that has to get done. And so how are you seeing them incorporate that kind of, because I think you guys are in a unique position when you are implementing software and working with that team who's already doing all these other things. Like, how does that all fit? Because to me, it's almost like, because I'm a child, you think about a 12-piece puzzle, not a big puzzle. But you think about a 12-piece kid's puzzle, and now I need to add a 13th piece, right? And so how does that functionally work when they start putting things together for themselves?
I think it's a lot of coming out of the silo that has been compensation management, in a sense. So there's sort of this, it's a similar motion that we saw with pay equity, when pay equity was no longer owned by the lawyers and the labor economists, and Total Reward started to take ownership of it. I think with transparency, it's forcing comp teams to realize they don't own comp decisions. I mean, they never did, but they really don't. And now there's this sort of like democratization, and it's really rethinking, well, so how do we scale this thing? How do we still have the control and the guardrails that we want, but also scale it? So I'm seeing this kind of a combination of, all right, what are efficiencies we can gain Is it with technology? Is it with outsourcing it? Is it, sort of like kind of rethinking the operation? And then it's also having to do something you and I have talked about a lot during our sessions, which is basically compensation marketing. How do I get the buy-in I need from leadership? How do I sell what we're doing just across the board from top down so that way I have to relinquish some control over what happens here in terms of how decisions are made. And I can't be reviewing every single comp decision. It's just not possible. And a lot of the folks we talk to don't really want to be in that position, but at the same time they're like, oh, but don't do that and don't do that. So that it's sort of like, all right, how do I balance, like, what are decisions that I'm okay with people making? How do we scale that quickly? And then what are the things that I need escalated that no, we do want to be able to weigh in on? And then, how do I get leaders to buy into that? How do I get leaders to do what I need them to do and pay attention to the right things? So I just see sort of this, I think, rethinking the operation. And I feel like, each of us, has touched or worked in technology in some way. And I think part of it is, I feel like comp overall has been slower to the tech table in a way. Like there's other parts of HR have had so much to, access. And now that's why we're seeing sort of this era of like all these different things are kind of coming into play for comp. And now comp's trying to figure out how do I put those pieces of the puzzle? There's just new pieces, I guess, of the puzzle that they're putting together in new and different ways and rethinking kind of what is their role in all of that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that made any sense. So
No, for sure. I mean, I think, we've talked about this a lot before, Sean and I in particular, around like comp has been filled with really good tech people from a Excel standpoint, right? Like most people got ahead
right.
in rewards because they were great with spreadsheets. That is absolutely 100% my story, right? Like the first decade of success for me was just that I could figure out formulas better than everybody else, right? So as a result, we've become reliant on it, right? So it's this vicious cycle. Like it was the quantitative place within HR. As a result, that's where the quantitative people went. We're really good at spreadsheets, and as a result, we love our spreadsheets, and don't take it away from me. Like that's been the mindset. And I think now we're realizing, oh, there's problems with that, right? Those spreadsheets have mistakes. Those spreadsheets get too reliant on Paul who built it. And then when Paul goes somewhere else, we don't know how to run it. So I do think there's been an awakening to the shakiness of spreadsheets. It's still the market share leader in every comp tech category, as we talk about, right?
Yeah.
Market data is the only exception. You can't make that up in a spreadsheet. But everything else, you can do it, right? And Sean, you talk about how comp people have been like the heroes with that spreadsheet, and they just figure it out because they have no budget and they can do it.
Yeah.
So it's a high bar for the tech providers to prove ROI to get you out of your spreadsheet. Like that's a tough sell. So I guess it's not necessarily that like we woke up today and said, oh, I think I'll use technology. It's more like the risks of using manual processes and spreadsheets are clearer than they've ever been. And I think we're finally getting better at sort of communicating the value of a more enterprise sort of system approach.
I think that the thing that goes with that, though, is comp and payroll, right, get kind of beat up for being later to the party. But like, in the software side, if I screw up, like I just, within the next week we fix the software, right? And that's a problem. If I accidentally reduce everyone's pay by like $5, like I'm sure there's a line outside my office, let alone $500 or $5,000, right? And so I think the risk reward on using that has been one thing. I also think, because I'm going to use the big word Nancy used, democratization, because she had to throw a big word out there. I know, look at that. That's a big word. Yeah, now someone's going to think I'm a consultant.
6 syllables?
I know, look at that. That is huge. Look at her. She's still, I don't remember, what was the word? I literally had to stop and Google in the middle of a presentation once. She was talking, and I literally had to get my phone out and be like, I don't know what to do.
Perseverate. You always make fun of
perseverate.
I say
let's go.
perseverate.
Go, Paul. You don't know what that is? Yeah, you got to perseverate. I also think, though, the democratization of Excel when you started looking at how do I send this stuff down? Because if you think about comp software and the things, and Nancy, I know there's the spaces where we're going, and I know in the new graphic, Paul, you've got this kind of democratization of data, right?
Yeah.
In my opinion, that's not what the box is called because it was too many syllables and too long. But that's what it is. It's the tools weren't made; they were made for the comp department, right?
Right.
And once a year, we sent out the Excel spreadsheet to do its job, sent the army of Excel out, and brought it back. And then we put it back in our tool and did our special thing, and it wasn't able to be sent out. And I'm really excited to see, you've got comp planning tools, you've got tools that are doing pay equity that are doing it, you've got just a number of tools that are out that are now allowing this data to be in the hands of managers through the year. And that was not a thing in the past either. But Excel was easy because not only did comp people know it really, really well, but they could send it out.
Yeah.
And like most people knew what Excel was, or as I joked on around the security problem with it, or they had a child who knew how to use Google Sheets or Excel that could do the math for them and run that, which is not a security problem at all.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, and I think you bring up a good point. It's that risk piece too that I think there is this kind of risk tolerance that is being created. I think that comp people are sort of engaging in. I'm just thinking, I did give somebody a decrease once. So, like, I know that feel.
Jeez. You need to go back and study psychology again, because that does not land well.
That does not. Yeah. How did that? Do I need a psychology degree to know how that went?
It was a mistake on from my Excel sheet.
Yeah. Okay, so there we go. All right, you didn't choose.
During
that
annual
was
planning.
Damn, like Nancy
Yes.
chose to.
I literally had somebody come up to me. She said, I knew I wasn't crazy about my merit increase, but I don't think I was supposed to get a decrease. And I realized I put somebody else's rate. That was totally my fault. I was very fortunate. Yes. Anyway, so.
Well, I think the other piece of that, kind of semi-pivoting to Europe, because we've
Yes.
presented here, we've talked more about the U.S. administrative, it's coming fast.
Gosh, yeah.
And the big one, of course, when you talk about democratizing data, and I've used it 3 times.
You shorten it. Democratizing is shorter than democratization. So you're simplifying, which I appreciate. Like,
well, that's
just
really, if you know me, that's where we're going to end up at some point.
I
We're
think
just going to
you're
say, give it to
perseverating.
everybody.
You're
Yeah.
perseverating on this word of democracy.
Oh God, here we go. Yeah.
I still don't know
So
what that means.
specifically tie this to like Article 7, Paul and I've talked about, because this is, this kind of, to me, ties it all up with this right to information. So do everyone a solid and give us your definition of,
right to information.
that normal people would understand with normal small words, Nancy.
Basically, so Nancy can go in and request the average, or can make a request. They don't say exactly how. Can make a request for the average pay, and I'm going to put pay in quotations for a minute, for men and women in her category of work, or in this group, however the group is defined. So there's like a bunch of definitions around how you define the group, how you define pay, but essentially, yeah, it's a level of transparency that we're not accustomed to. Somebody being able to say, I want to know on average what women make, what men make, and then, oh yeah, by the way, summarize me too, show me as well, so that way I have a total comparison of how I fit kind of in this picture of this group. So yeah, there's a lot around, say, category of work, how people are defining that. That's work of equal value. So a lot of companies are interpreting that to be, well, in a whole, say, grade, because that's work of equal value. It's why we value the work similarly, so we put everybody in the same grade. There's a whole question. Pay is also a really broad definition. So it's total remuneration. It's everything. So it's base, bonus, it's equity, it's allowances, it's your benefits, it's, so it's all of that as well. And any employee in the EU, so if you have one employee, they can make this request. So yeah, there's a lot of activity right now, because as a lot of people are trying to figure out how they're going to operationalize it even, who's going to get the request, who's going to process the request, who's going to send the request back, how are they going to contextualize it? Do I share our comp philosophy along with that? Do I give them some other information? Like I know RTI, that right to information has a certain baseline of what needs to be provided, but like, do I pile on? Where does it show up? How do I do it? So it's been an interesting, we've had a lot of discussions with companies and, on the one hand, you want to be like administratively, well, just give employees access, sure. And then like other folks are like, wait, what? No, I don't think so. Yeah, so
it's so interesting on that piece though, because for me, like, on day, everyone keeps thinking about day one, right? There's right to information and like everyone's going to put a request in because like who's not, right? Like maybe some of the guys weren't who are like, I don't want to know how overpaid I am. Like, I don't need to know that, but like, they won't. But I'm of the belief that the overhead is going to drive this into the hands of the individuals because every time someone comes or goes, I'm going to go grab that next report. And then pretty soon I'm going to do the math to figure out who makes what, right? So like if a guy leaves, did I move up or did I move down? Like what happened? And so it's just going to be this ongoing thing that you're like, the lift is going to be, I think, too high to not have somebody somehow, somewhere drop this in. And then I agree with you, Nancy, that lift includes like some weird questions that they haven't do before. Like, how do we share all year our pay philosophy at all times? Like that's usually a once a year, 80-page PowerPoint so no one will read it thing. Like, yeah.
And that's where I think we just have to, one of the things I kind of keep coming back to is, the laws are the laws, and that tends to be, when you're threatened with fines, right, for not complying, yes, that's when a business often makes the decision to, well, I guess we got to do this thing. But at the same time, rewards are supposed to be rewarding, and employees are basically comp analysts now, where they're able to look up and do their own analysis of what they should be paid. And I think we were just saying it, Sean, in one of our sessions, that I keep coming back to this idea that that's great. Like you realize employees are coming to you, but they're coming to you with information that's external, not about your philosophy, not about the choices you make, how you compare, yourselves to other companies, what's critical for your business. Like, wouldn't it be better if you leaned into educating them around that? Because really I think it's just all about empathy. Like, what do I want to know as an employee? I want to know why I'm paid what I'm paid, what you're basing it on. I want to know that it's fair. Want to know generally how it compares to others. I want to know how to make more money. Like that's basically like, those are the basic things. So how can we get good at leading with that story as opposed to this sort of, I'm disclosing this to you because the government says I have to.
I think that the challenge I'm hearing, particularly from larger employers, not disagreeing with anything you just said, the big challenge is if they've got 2,000 managers in the EU, you're not going to teach 2,000 people to have empathy. You can't. You're not going to teach 2,000 people to tell a consistent story when they themselves are a subject of that story.
Yes.
And I am a overpaid male. I'm going to approach that conversation differently, male manager to be clear, than if I'm an underpaid female manager. Like that's just human nature. And there's this challenging balance of, well, how much do we centralize and standardize? But how much do we need to sort of enable and trust that people are still going to talk to their manager, right? There's this, it's a little bit of both, of course.
Yeah.
But like, how do you manage that knowing that managers are humans too? And as much as we train, as much as we educate, as much as we give the talking points, like, that when the rubber meets the road, they're saying what they feel. And like, how do you enable that? So I think that's the interesting part of this, particularly for big employers with lots of managers and lots of employees. Like, how does this scale, right? In this era where we're still working through some trash from from eras ago that maybe our job architecture isn't all that clean. Maybe our comm structure isn't all that great. Right, there's still things out there.
That's why I'm for centralization, Paul. Like, and doing it through the tool. I know it's not as cool, but like, not to mention if you have 2,000 managers, like, if you only turn over 5% of them. Like that's 100, right? Like 100 new humans that, and the right to information isn't like merit where you're like, hey, they're going to get their access to the information, May 1st. So in April, we'll tell you guys what to say. It's like, they're going to come ask right after the manager leaves too, just to be like, that's just how it's going to go.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I think one of the things we've learned from pay transparency overall these past few years is it doesn't have to be overly complicated. You can, and to your point, I think there is an element of centralization. One of the things we do see is a lot of comp
Yeah.
teams that are decentralized are really struggling a lot more with a lot of this than those that are more centralized. And those are the ones that are, I think, really worried. The ones that, like you're saying, like, crap, we have to do this thing. Oh, am I allowed to say that on this?
Oh yeah.
That's it.
We've heard worse.
So, okay.
Please, if I only said crap somewhere, Nancy, we're on a solid day. So
Okay. So I don't want to be a potty mouth. So here we here we are. We've got the right to information. It's any employee in Europe. I'm fine with France where we have like a decent, big facility. But oh my gosh, I have like in Poland we have like 2 people or I have like a pretty smaller team, and now like it's not like I have people on the ground, in every location. So that an element of centralization is definitely what a lot of folks are doing. But in another sense, what's interesting is, you give people just enough information, and the remarkable thing is, a lot of times people are surprised by what they don't hear. So a lot of the experiences have been they've prepared, they're like, all right, we're going to be sharing this information out there, get ready. And they do all these education sessions. They do sessions with managers where they're letting managers like have the talking points, but now speak them. Like let's do some role playing. Let's try it out. Like make sure you feel comfortable. You've internalized the messages. Okay, cool. Let's do office hours where I'm just get on a Zoom call and anybody can join, and they're just going to ask me questions as a comp person. Ask me anything. So, sometimes people just hearing each other, right? Managers answering other managers' questions. Great. Then the day comes. Our ranges are posted, or this is public. They get no questions. Nobody asks anything. They've done all this preparation. A lot of times, employees are hearing maybe for the first time that level of detail around the comp program. Even though you had the module like on the website and they were supposed to study it and whatever, they never really paid attention until, a law went into effect. So that's been the experiences of a lot of folks over time. I mean, you're always going to have people coming into the conversation who already don't trust you as an employer. They're suspicious, they've had bad experiences, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So in some regards, it's just, I think you put your best foot forward, you keep it simple, you don't overcomplicate it. You're authentic, you're also not perfect. But I think and you admit fully, yeah, there's things we have to work on. There are things we are prioritizing. We don't have all the money in the world. We have to choose kind of carefully where we're investing it.
And I wonder too, just having been around the comp world long enough to remember sort of other attempts at transparency. I don't want to say they've fallen flat, but I think life finds a way to de-emphasize it. So like the CEO pay ratio, we all thought that was going to be a big frickin' deal where we have to publish the average employee pay. Was it a big deal? Yes. I think what we found is for a lot of companies, the less you said, the more people didn't pay attention because, there's just a lot of reasons this isn't making any sense. Or the original sort of UK gender pay gap reporting. I was at a company where we tried to explain why, and do it right instead of just doing it the way that we were told to do it. When we did it right, it caused more problems. If we just did it the way that the government wanted us to, we could say, well, yeah, it just so happens that our country's CEO is a male. So yes, it's going to be different. And nobody cared when I said that, right? So I'm waiting to see how does life find a way here. And I'm not encouraging companies to be nefarious or find the loopholes, but I wonder what's the unintended sort of, we didn't think about that side. Because that's true with every legislation, right? So my suspicion is over the next 2 years, the kinks will get worked out. The courts will weigh in on, I know it said this, but this is really the way that we want this to work.
Yeah.
Countries will evolve. I think our first set is not going to be the final set because
Agree.
it's sort of different than, or we want it to be different than what these other past transparency
Oh,
strategies have tried to be.
but I will say this. I think that past transparency, though, was all in the aggregate. And I think that's where it falls
True.
apart,
Yeah.
right? Nobody, I mean, I keep coming back to personally, I don't give a crap about, see, they're trying to be a little more G-rated. Anyway, but I really, I don't care about that aggregate number. That is sort of meaningless to me. I know the story the aggregate number is going to tell every time. I've had a career now of over 30 years, which sounds really scary, and guess what? I remember having these conversations when I was in HR, young HR professional, and we were looking at, for example, I worked for a retail company. And I remember a woman I worked with, and she's like, well, about men making more. And I'm like, nah, you know what? And I did a little analysis on our store managers at the time. I worked for Mikasa. They don't exist anymore, but the brand is still out there. It's dinnerware and crystal. And so I'm not throwing shade on them. But at the time, the operation, we had store managers. We had about 200 store managers. And, we sold dinnerware and stuff. So guess what? It was usually women that were the store managers. We did have a handful, though, of male store managers. And wouldn't you know, 201, they all made more than the women. Like, and it was just, yeah. And it was just, and then at the time, remember being like, wait, what? And I'm confident we could justify it with their experience and all those different things. But like, that was the fact, Jack. So I don't care about the aggregate number. What I care about is my individual number
Yeah.
and the context you're putting it in. So when I do find out that I'm at the bottom of the range, and I find out that Sean and I are doing the exact same job and he's in the middle of the range or near the top of the range, I'm going to wonder why.
Yeah.
And I think that's where right to information honestly scares me a little bit, in the sense that it's based on this big aggregated number. So as total remuneration, really? Like, okay. But then it is much more granular than we're accustomed to. So I think there's that level. The more granular we get, that's where I think the risk is, because then it's just getting much more personal, and pay is so personal.
Personal, but also like the right to information is the average man and the average woman. And then if you want to provide more, like, well, how do you actually justify that? You start talking about things like multivariate regression. Okay, cool. Like the three of us will be like, yeah, that's another hour of fun, right? Like, but you're trying to explain that back out to the employees to now justify what's going on. That's going to fall short, because that gets complicated. And so you kind of have this cliff of, well, why are they underpaid? Well, actually, we can explain that. Well, how do you explain it? Well, we explain it with, log linear regression models over multiple variables. And the employee's like, so that's bullshit, right? Like, you're just making up answers now, right? Because they don't have time nor care enough, other than, to your point, Nancy, it becomes very personal. Like, all I know is I'm under the number.
Right.
End of story. We need to fix that, right?
Yeah, unless you can explain it pretty cleanly, like, hey, Sean has more experience. Hey, Sean did this thing and we adapted. He's got this specific skill set. Like, unless you're able to really crisply explain something that makes sense.
I just think it's going to be, it's so, well, you've heard me say, humans are highly statistically predictable in this case, but amazingly individually unique. But that might be the case, that I have more experience. But you can't always use that, because I also suck and you're great, right? And so like that's going to be a problem, right? And they're going to be like, okay, so it's just experience, not how well I do, right? And so like, you go down this rabbit hole for every one of them. And I think this is where the time suck is going to really come from them. It's not just it's not the data. It's the follow-up questions that are going to be, inordinate. And now you've got people who are already overworked, who answers that question? The manager, they definitely don't want anything to do with this most of the time. HR, they're like, please bring me back my spreadsheet. I want to go back and work with Paul on spreadsheets. Like, there's this weird place, like, do you have to hire somebody who's almost like a psychologist to go back, who's a compensation psychologist to deal with this? And I think it's going to be really interesting. And then I think the legal precedent, how this all shakes out over a period of time, is really going to change, like, how much people care. Like, hey, it's going to cost me, I think the money's going to be big. Otherwise, if it's not, people will be like, oh, so for $50,000 fine, I can say screw it. Like, okay, whatever, right? Kind of like the CEO rationale, right, Paul? Like people will be like, well, I just won't say anything about it and pay a fine. Cool.
Yeah.
Or does it?
Or I'll do it. I'll just do it plain vanilla and make it bad math is really that's the fear I have. And I don't think people will do it because, Nancy, you're 100% right. Like there's enough specification about what like work is in the regulation that it's going to be hard to hide.
Yes.
Is it possible? Absolutely. But is it going to be more difficult than the CEO pay ratio? Because you just do CEO pay ratio globally, and India gets factored in, and as a result, it's a big number, and you just tell people that. Like that was the end state solution.
Italy's going to have like 4 buckets. Like this is where the math's going to go bananas, right? Like, are you going to provide more? But basically, what you have to provide to the government, if you do the minimum, you're going to put everyone in 4 buckets. Yeah. You're like 4 buckets.
Yeah.
Like
that's a good example of where it's probably going to have the unintended consequence of not really being helpful, right? It's almost it's too simple.
And that's where I do think companies have an opportunity to then kind of weigh in and say, so there are things we have to do for the government. This is what we're reporting. This is what we're doing. And here's what we've been doing all along and talking to you all along about why we pay what we pay.
Yeah.
Here's your base salary. Here's your bonus. Here's this. Here's that. Just doubling down on here's the stuff we've always talked about. And my hope is part of the law is the involvement of the works councils. One of the things that we've been, reminding companies is, yep, you're worried about what to tell them. Hey, aren't these the same people you had to sell on your job architecture? Right? You've had a lot of these conversations. There's a lot of stuff they already know. Build on that.
It's interesting you say that because you think about the way the Italian law is written. It's kind of married up to their works councils. Right. And the knee-jerk reaction is kind of like I first read it. Well, it's only 4 categories and it's matched up to them was kind of bad. But you're like, wait, there's actually some silver linings. You've already kind of agreed on some stuff. It's a bargaining agreement at some level, whatever term you want to use with the works council. Right. So I think that's actually kind of interesting too. So I just think there's going to be so much coming out. And I think this new communications piece is going to be how much can you centralize and do it in place? And then how do you give it? And then how do you answer questions on the fly? It's a whole new space.
Yeah, it really is. Employees are going to know a lot more than they've ever known before. They continue to. And I think that's, as comp professionals, we just haven't been accustomed to that. We knew what everybody was paid. We saw it all. And now one of the things we just have to remember is that everybody else is going to know now too.
Well, they can all go look online, right?
Yeah.
I was sad. All the AI tools told me I was overpaid. So they were at least consistent. So that's fine. I know being cognizant of time, we always ask at the end, and you have the unique perspective of, practitioner, consultant, and at a software company. If you could fix one thing automagically, that's my big word for the day, automagically in HR, what would it be?
Oh, wow. Well,
better be good.
I'm too long on it.
I still don't know what that word means.
Perseverate. It just means when you're focused on that. It's more of a therapy word. So my son is autistic.
Why say focus on it, Paul, when you can say perseverate?
Perseverate is when you're so hyper focused on it that it's
I understand hyper focus. That's a word I understand.
Things, yes.
That comes.
So now you can say perseverate if you need to say it twice.
All right.
Now
kids are asking you about
what do you got?
Okay. All right. Honestly, I'm looking forward to the time when compensation will be much more transparent. I think people are going to know. I want us to rip off the Band-Aid. I wish people would just know what everybody's making, and then we would just start to just make the corrections we need to make, justify the things that we have to justify. Everybody could be grown-ups about it. This is why this exists, why this is here. So I know that's not a popular opinion, but I did have that reaction to an exercise I did with some companies around what if everybody knew everything, had access to everything tomorrow? What would your reaction be? The first 3 reactions, because one of them would be you'd get sick or pass out. But but then like, what would you do? And that helps you prioritize then what you need to work on. And I did have one person say, ah, that'd be great. Because then they would all know we've been telling the truth all along. And it was like, oh, I never had that reaction. That's cool.
Well, that's assuming everything's good. But yeah,
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. So for those that aren't following Nancy, and I am not going to try to spell your name here for those listening. Go and check on when we drop it. See it in this thing. Follow her. There's tons of great content she puts out from across the space around pay equity everywhere. Links to it, whatever. So she's a great person to follow. Great person in general. So we'll give you a big head.
And also to follow. Yeah.
Yeah, and also to follow. And follow us if you can, and we really appreciate you taking the time out, Nancy. We don't need, and you're just Nancy. So you're our first. I think you're our first guest that just goes by one name in the industry. You're like the Beyonce of pay equity now.
I thought about that. Like, we didn't do it, but like, I don't think I've ever called Mark Zipco Mark. Like, he's always just Zipco, right? There are a few other people that kind of.
Which is an ironic one, because then if you have to spell it, it's a problem.
Then you can't, right? But
yeah,
it's just fun to say. Like, there's a handful of people that like you can sort of shorten. Everyone's like, oh yeah, I know who that is.
Yeah, and that's Nancy. Just showed up as Nancy right in the flow of conversation.
Right.
So, but give a follow, everyone. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much, Nancy.
Thanks, Nancy.
All right. Thank you both.